Oh, dear Lord. The sound unmuted. I quickly, boom, tried to mute it again. It unmuted on its own, and I accidentally muted it. Thank you. Dear Lord. All right, so, sorry, Joe. I'm going to have to do this again. I'll try to speed it up. Trump will hold... Oh, and you're muted. You're muted too, Joe.
Oh, I mean, everything you said, I heard it.
Yeah, I was muted to the outside, so we can usually talk on the back end, and there's a channel that opens up to the outside, and it toggled wrong. Trump is going to hold a news conference on January 6th, 1 year after the insurrection. He said he's going to discuss the events of that day. That has been panned as a really poor idea. 4 people died on that day. One officer died the next day after from injuries he sustained, and more than 700 people have been arrested. Trump has had argued that people should fight like hell and that he would never concede the November 3rd election. He's going to talk about it from Mar-a-Lago on January 6th. The evidence, a number of military experts have come out and said that the evidence is, in their view, quite strong that Russia has actually already decided that they're going to invade the Ukraine and are simply preparing to do so. There's a number of reasons now. They've done troop buildups to make it look like they're going to invade, just to saber rattle. This is different for a number of reasons. They have dramatically increased the number of cyber intrusions into the Ukraine government. They have since early December. 75% of Russia's total battalion tactical groups have been moved. Artillery, air defense units, tanks, APCs, bridge laying equipment, mine clearers, armored excavators, engineering equipment, refueling, and a large number of other logistical units have all been moved. Since you can't keep those on the front lines for an extended period of time, it indicates that, at least the military experts are saying that they believe there is going to be a invasion imminent. They did issue a number of demands to NATO, saying first that NATO must deny membership of Ukraine into the alliance. Also, Western countries must be required to get consent from Moscow if they deploy troops to former Soviet countries, and that NATO abstain from military drills near the Russian borders. NATO absolutely has not rejected. NATO has not responded. The general consensus is this is an absolute joke, and they will not agree to any of that. So that was also the general consensus, is that that's why the demands were made. We know the U.S., they know NATO will not cede to it, and so they are preparing a reason to invade. They have now started, as of I think last night, claims that the U.S. has been sending mercenaries with chemical weapons to the Ukraine, that the U.S. has been training Ukraine military to deploy those weapons against Russia, and with the suggestion, and ostensibly as a pretense for the grounds of a preemptive attack against the Ukraine to defend themselves from chemical weapons that the U.S. has been supplying. At least that's what they appear to be doing. So Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said tanks with unidentified chemical components have been delivered to the cities Avdiivka and Kashy-Liman for the completion of these provocations. Let's see, we have some encouraging news coming out of South Africa. A study released by NICD shows that South Africans contracting COVID-19 in the current 4th wave of infections are 80% less likely to be hospitalized if they contracted Omicron compared with the other strains. But once a patient is hospitalized, there's no difference in the severity of the disease, according to that research. Britain has now exceeded 100,000 new COVID cases a day for the first time ever. Meanwhile, there has been a wave of new voting restrictions in the United States on the grounds that there was too much of a risk that there was, in fact, fraud in our last election. 19 states have made new laws restricting voting. Every single one of those laws has been independently certified to restrict voting more than they will actually inhibit any kind of fraud. Fraud numbers in the U.S. still being astonishingly low. Let's see. Meanwhile, more good news. It looks like Trump is facing in the coming weeks 2 possible sets of criminal indictments against him. The January 6th Select Committee is weighing the possibility of a criminal referral to Attorney General Merrick Garland into the Department of Justice. Legal experts say that they believe this is going to come, and if you listen to Liz Cheney, I think she's made up her mind that she wants to send it. If it goes, the chances that it will bring down some kind of indictment against him from the Department of Justice is very strong. Meanwhile, David K. Johnson reported on MSNBC that he believes racketeering and other Rico statute offenses are going to be presently levied against Donald Trump by the Southern District of New York. We'll discuss that in a few minutes. Let's see. Let's see. We can, and then the. I wonder. I think I seem to have don't have the. Yes. Okay. The Guardian is reporting that Camille Gendobai, a Tunisian who was the chairman of the UN Council investigation into war crimes by the Royal House of Soutter in Yemen, was hacked by the Pegasus Software in August of 2019, shortly before they released a report finding that the Royal House of Saud committed, quote, serious violations of international humanitarian law that could lead to criminal responsibility for war crimes. This was the second time someone critical of Saudi Arabia, a country which licenses the Pegasus software, had their phones hacked by it in apparent violation of the Israeli developer's terms of service. His phone is confirmed to have been hacked and is on the list of 50,000 numbers that the Times reported on earlier this year, adding further evidence to the claim that list is in fact genuine, and which, if it is, it's quite frightening considering the people who are on it. So what I think I'm going to do is we've got a few more, but I've bounced around on the script a little bit. So let's just kick it right over, Joe, and let's. What would you like to talk about? We've got a number of things. And by the way, for anyone who wants to know about the Pegasus, we have a link to our original show on the Pegasus software. It is purportedly capable of hacking any phone and getting complete control of any phone without any user interaction. The user doesn't need to click or do anything like that. And it is licensed by, or it's owned by, I think it's NFO, which is an Israeli software and security firm. And it's all that information is in the link below if you want to learn more about that. But I think we're gonna keep hearing as they go into this. But a couple, I think it was last month, 7 U.S. diplomats, it turned out, had also been hacked. So it's just getting crazy. So Joe, you are still muted. What would you like to talk about?
Okay, so I guess Ukraine. Now that list of demands from Russia, is that verified or is that just no. Speculation?
No, that was verified, and NATO ignored the list.
Yeah, well, yeah, with good reason. But the thing that obviously there was no way that NATO was going to accept that. But really. I think this is a big test for NATO, but I think it has to step up. I think that I don't think Russia actually wants to get into a shooting war with NATO. And quite frankly, knowing what I do of their actual numbers of in their military, as far as aircraft and tanks and armored personnel carriers and all that. Their numbers are way off from what they used to be. Mm-hmm. And so I really feel like what NATO needs to do is to make a show, to move some of their own logistics in there, move a tank battalion or two or mechanized battalion or two in there and basically say, don't do it because we're here and we're going to take an attack on, if you attack our guys, we're going to take that as a warlike act. So, I think that will be enough to get Russia to back off because they do not want a shooting war. It's not in their interest to have a shooting war.
That's an interesting. They could do also NATO could do what the Soviet Union did in The Cuban Missile Crisis, which is deploy advisors into the front lines, and if they're American advisors, the problem is, it makes it a lot harder to invade because you don't want to kill Americans in your during your invasion, and they end up being human shields.
I think we have to go further than that, because I think the problem is that if as much as the Russian military is a lot smaller than it used to be, if they were to, because remember they already took Crimea, so if they were to actually invade the rest of the country, we would not be able to respond fast enough with heavy units to be able to stop them. And once they're there, then it becomes a shooting war to drive them out. And I think that would be a mistake. I think waiting would be a monumentally bad idea. I think what we have to do is take the step and say, hey, look, this is a bridge you don't want to cross, and we're ready to go. Send a couple hundred aircraft, send like I said, a couple divisions, a multinational force, and have each member nation send at least a brigade, and have the U.S. send a division to make it serious. So look, we're serious, and we're not going to put up with it. They won't come.
All right, so I'm thinking about what you're saying, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So if we have to respond, it's too late. We've already lost. It sounds like is what you're saying, and that makes a lot of sense. So send the troops there ahead of time. Now, my suspicion is that Biden doesn't want to do that because of the grounds: A, perhaps that it's provocative, and B, then if they attack, you almost have to go to war at that point, and you don't have any options. So, A, do you think either of those is true? And B, if those are true, do you think Biden has the balls to do it anyway? Muted. You so belong on this show. You're just, I love it. I love it. It's just, this is a mutathon. It's not just me. Please continue.
Yeah. So I suspect that he doesn't want to do it, but again, I think it's a mistake not to. Because like I said, if they occupy Ukraine, the only way to take them out of there would be by force. And now we're talking about a counter invasion, and that's going to get ugly real fast. But so you have to basically draw the line in the sand, and basically and I mean, putting troops in Ukraine is minimally provocative, but I mean, given the fact that we know that they're lining up on the border, and they know that they're lining up on the border, and we know they're lining up on the border. You think about it. I mean, think about what we did in 91 or 90 and 91. Operation Desert Shield, started in late 1990, and there was for the same reason. It's like, hey, enemies got forces. Well, in that case, they'd actually invaded Kuwait, but we said, hey, we're going to protect Saudi Arabia. We're going to send forces in there to make sure that nothing happens. So at the very least, I would move, at least initially, either the 101st Air Assault or 82nd Airborne, just to get things started, and then they can kind of set the groundwork, and then you're going to want some heavy units as well. Again, I certainly don't want a shooting war with Russia either, but I think the way to avoid it is to let them know that we're prepared for it if it comes, because they don't want it any more than we do.
Well, okay. Again, I'm sold. I think you're right. That I hadn't thought about it. I think you're right. So I'm sold. But my question is, do you think Biden will do it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's, I guess I'll say it's not 50-50. I think it's probably 40-60 with the 60 against. Okay. And that's unfortunate, because I think if he does that, it's, if he passes on that, I think it'll be a big mistake. But we'll see what happens. I suspect if things were going better politically here at home, he might be more willing, but because, like the mansion and the whole Build Back Better thing not going well, I think that he's going to be a little gun shy, literally.
Well, and that may be part of their motivation into doing it. But I think one reason that they're even considering it is because they successfully snagged Crimea, and we decided we weren't going to go in afterwards to boot them, because that's a hell of a lot harder. If we had preemptively blocked it, we might have had a shot, but we didn't. Right. And if we don't stop them here, what's next? So,
Crimea was a great test case, right? And you're right. We weren't willing to go in and boot them out of Crimea. So, it's the same thing. It's Crimea was a test case, and this is really, if you think about it, this is the same thing that Hitler did with the European countries. It's like, oh well, I'm going to take a little bit of this. Oh, I'm going to take a little bit of that. I'm going to take a little bit of that. And next thing you know. Now, I'm not saying that Russia has designs on all of Europe. I mean, they don't have the military force for that anymore. But they're definitely going to take as much as they can get away with.
Well, anything that was related to the former Soviet Union, they're gonna have eyes on.
Yeah.
So, all right, Joy. Speaking of, and you had mentioned this, and I hadn't. So, Minchin has said once again that he will not be supporting any of the Build Back Better. So what's going on with that? Because
and it goes. It tells me that he was never bargaining in good faith, because the original plan that basically Biden and Bernie worked out together was $6 trillion, and then Manchin said, "Oh, that's too much," so they bargained down to $3.5 trillion. And then Manchin said, "Oh, that's too much," even though he had agreed to 3.5 tentatively, and so they went down to 2.1 on his say so. And then now he's saying he won't go for the thing that he wanted. This is what he said was the better place. He said 3.5 was too much. Let's go to 2.1, and they did that. And so that tells me, yeah, he was never going to support it. The thing that gets me, though, I was reading an article last night that the coal workers union is pissed at him. And yes. Mind you, these are people, even though they're union, that they tend to be conservative. They tend to vote right wing, but they're pissed at him because there are provisions in there for coal workers. There, for one that's in general is the child tax credit, but there is another thing that there's a fund, and I want to say it was for people who have suffered from like black lung disease and other things related to mining. That was like a fund to kind of compensate them for their health issues, and basically, if Build Back Better doesn't go through, that fund doesn't get funded because I guess it's an existing program. But part of Build Back Better is to not only fund that program but to increase the funding, and so now they're losing a lot of money that would go to help compensate. So he's stabbing them in the back, and here he is, Mr. Cole, and so he was making the big thing of like, well, I can't go with this because it's going to hurt my miners. That's why he couldn't go with some of the green energy provisions. But now he's not stabbing him in the back; he's stabbing him in the face.
Well, and I think I first heard that last night, and as of today, he hasn't shown any signs of changing his mind or letting up. So,
No, and the thing is, what gets me about it is that, okay, so he had said, and look, he had said the other day, and I was okay with this. His point at one point when I thought he was being an honest honest
interlocutor, honest broker,
this whole affair. Yeah. He said, well, look, you went down to 2.1. But you didn't want to prioritize. So a lot of the things you've got in there are temporary. So it looks good for a little while, but then it's going to end. And what good is that? Was his point. I disagree with him that I don't think there's nothing good to come from a temporary program. I think the idea of that, the people who were making them having temporary provisions were that, well, if we get it in and it's popular, it'll be easier to get it renewed later on, which may or may not be true, but it's very often true. But his thing was like, no, like have fewer priorities, but do them right and make them permanent. Okay. But I heard nothing that anyone said that they weren't willing to do that. I mean, they weren't really thrilled with it, but they were still having a negotiation. And now he's just like, no, I'm not going to vote for it. So, because to me, if he was being honest here, he would come up with a counter proposal, because that's how the infrastructure and transportation bill was worked out, is they kept going back and forth, and that's how it normally works. You go back and forth. Okay, I don't quite like what you're doing here, but how about this? And he didn't do that, which tells me he had no interest in really doing this. He's basically show, it's a dick waving thing. He's showing off his muscle. I've got power. And I think he's trying to show the conservatives in his state, well, see, I held back the radical people in my party. It's not going to work. You go and stab the coal workers. And again, there's only 60,000 coal workers and only half of them are in West Virginia. But that's enough because it's not just the coal workers, it's their families, it's their friends. So I think he's going to be in trouble in 2024. 2024. Is when he's up for election next. So I think he's going to be in trouble. And I'll tell you what, if the Democrats manage somehow to not lose seats, but maybe gain some seats in the Senate, I think you'll actually see the party kick him out to get the fuck out of here. We're not interested in you because he's basically, he's not acting like someone who's in this party. And some people said, well, he's there to represent the people of his state. Well, the people of his state elected a Democrat and they're not getting one.
And it's not just the families of those two, but anybody who would normally vote Democrat and who would voted for him prior probably is going to be. I'll point out one other thing, which is something you and I have lamented more than once when the debt limit gets hit, which is basically the entire fucking U.S. budget is temporary. If temporary is going to be your objection, it's going to cause you to block shit. We wouldn't get anything, and I mean anything, in this country done. The number of things we do that's permanent is like really fucking small, and even when it's done, it's still done in pencil.
Well, right. I mean, the thing is that there are programs that are like, okay, we're expect this program is created, but you're right. Congress can defund an existing program so it doesn't go off the books. We just don't give it any money, and it can't operate.
Obamacare.
Republicans have done. Actually, Trump did that.
Obamacare still exists. They didn't kill it. They just made the fines to zero.
Right. We just won't fund it and let it wither on the vine. So yeah, you're right. I mean, so even a permanent thing is tentative at best.
Yeah, it's disingenuous. That's unfortunate.
Oh, so speaking of Trump, the next thing I want to talk about, and I think you mentioned in the rundown, is that I know it's taken a long time, but those indictments are coming.
It looks
and I'm looking forward to that. So because the thing is that what they're doing is very smart. They're going out. So some people were saying to me, why didn't they get him yet? I'm like, well, they're going after his apparatus. They're basically cutting his feet out from under him. They're going for increasingly. They started with a small fish and then going to increasingly larger fish. So now there's a whole bunch of people who are on the hook, who have a lot of good reason to roll on him. So and then they're getting more information, they're getting more evidence, so that because they want to build a rock solid case, because they know if they go after him and they fail, it's just going to embolden him. It's actually going to strengthen his position and not weaken it. So they're trying to build an airtight, mountain, so they can just drop that mountain on him.
The Southern District in New York is one of the most tenacious legal districts in the fucking country. If you're going to do a crime, don't do it in the Southern District and especially if it's organized crime, because that's one of the things that they excel at, and they know how to do it, and they are experts. And one thing that they do it slowly. They do it really slowly, painstakingly fucking slowly. But you're right, they go from the bottom, they go up, and when they indicted his CFO, that's basically like, okay, and they got his CFO in to testify, and his CFO is going to flip, and that's because they aren't that interested in his CFO. They're going to get him on something because they have to, but they're interested in Trump, and the CFO, like, okay, they're basically at the top of the food chain now, but they're still taking their time. Now, there's very good evidence of money laundering through Deutsche Bank. There's evidence of bribes from Russia. He's got federal issues with the Trump Tower. We discussed some of that. We're going to end up having to discuss it again, I think. But yeah, I think, and the consensus is sometime between the next couple of days and the next couple of weeks, there will probably be a racketeering, at a minimum, some kind of racketeering charge from the Southern District hitting him, and or other RICO offenses. And RICO is really fucking serious. And if they get you on RICO, they can end you if they want to. So,
well, that's the thing, and that's why I think most of our audience would know what a CFO is, but for anybody who's not our regulars who happens to be tuning in, CFO is Chief Financial Officer. This is very high up the food chain in any corporation. They know where all the financial bodies are buried, as it were. So all the shady dealings and all the tax dodges and all those, they're gonna know all of it. So the fact that they have that person, that's like a linchpin in that organization. And to what Nick's point about Rico again. So the Rico Statute was designed. It's for basically enterprise corruption. It was a way to go after the mob, because when you have this big organization where there's big players and little players, and it's very hard to pin a lot of things on the people at the top, because they don't give a lot of written orders. There's a lot of code words and hand signals and all this kind of stuff. But so the idea was that you've built a corrupt organization, and ultimately the people at the top of the organization are responsible for everything underneath them. So that's what they want to do, because not only does it allow them to get Trump, but it basically allows them, if this charges stick, to destroy the Trump financial organization completely. And so we're talking, asset forfeiture and all that kind of stuff. So Trump could be financially ruined if they do this right.
And it's a criminal charge. So right now they've been looking at civil charges from the Attorney General of New York. So it looks like he's already facing civil charges that could bankrupt him but could not throw him in jail. But this would be criminal charges out of the Southern District. And hold on, one thing I want to do. I want to make one quick change here on the inside that may make everybody's life a little easier. So let's do that, because you sent me a screenshot. I want to make sure we get that cleared up. So, did I get that right? No, I probably didn't, but it's close enough. So, yeah, and we are going to have to do a show, I think, just outlining where his legal liabilities come. So the other one is, so Liz Cheney has been wording her questions. Oh, yes, please.
Sorry, before we move on, one other point I want to make. You made the point about the Southern District. The Southern District is brutal, and also, and if you think about it, if I'm not mistaken, they and the state attorney general are who brought charges against Andrew Cuomo. So, they are, not partisan. They're, they have a very good record of just, if you're bad, if you're dirty, we don't care what party you're from, we're going to get you.
It's and their reputation. I know lawyers who have worked with and in the Southern District, and everybody I've spoken to says that their reputation is earned. It really is that way on the inside as it is. They don't play. So there's that, and then Liz Cheney has been deliberately wording her questions in such a way that the answers directly implicate Trump in violations of U.S. law. So she's reading the law, and then she's phrasing her questions in such a way that a yes is, you've just accused him of a crime. So, and that's how a lawyer does it. I don't think she's got any legal background, but that's exactly how lawyers do it. It's a delight to watch, and the consensus is, again, that while they haven't officially said, they've said they are considering passing a criminal referral against Donald Trump to the Department of Justice. They've said they're considering it. The consensus is they're not considering it. They've already decided. They're just waiting until due process, and they don't want to get anyone pissed at them saying that they didn't finish the investigation. But they've decided they're going to do it. If they do it, first of all, I really like there is something it gives me a warm feeling knowing that the Attorney General is Merrick Garland. There is something about that, and I do think that he should go over to Gorsuch and say, "Excuse me, you're sitting in my seat." But since he can't do that,
there's some symmetry. There's some symmetry in it, if nothing else.
Yeah. So I'm pleased about that. I'm sorry. I'm going to dine on that one for a little while. But
to your point about what Liz Cheney is saying, you're right. I mean, somebody pointed out there was one question where it's literally the wording she used literally came straight out of the statute, and if the answer was yes, then that's confirmation of direct violation of federal law.
Yep. Yep. So, which also means that that's the intent. The intent is to pass this up.
Right.
And she's wording it and framing it in such a way that they will already have as much evidence as they can for Garland to build a case. Now, I have no doubt in my mind, I sincerely hope that Merrick Garland will treat this as he would any other case. As much as I like the irony of it, he can't take it personally, and he needs to do his job.
Well,
yeah.
The other thing too, there's more. I want to see what happens. There's more when it comes to and this isn't so much the Trump thing directly, but it's more of the January 6th committee.
Yeah.
Is that there's more and more. There's been a few more Republicans basically defying the committee, and it'll be interesting to see what happens because they're actually the committee just I forget who it was, but they just recommended another one for contempt, and it'll be interesting because it's like, well, didn't you guys see what's happened to Steve Bannon? I mean, he's in jail. He went to jail, and I think that's really what's going to take is to just start throwing them wholesale into jail.
I want to make this clear. The January 6th committee, and I want to say Park. I've forgotten the first one, and then they asked the second one.
Sorry. I want to address Darryl Frost's question.
Oh, yeah.
Once we see the DOJ actually doing anything, where's the grand jury already? Well, you don't ever see the grand jury. Grand jury works in secret, and they do not release notes, memos, not to the public anyway. So that's all happening behind the scenes. You're not going to see any of that. We never do. Basically, what happens is that the grand jury the grand jury acts on the evidence. And they say, yes, we think there's evidence to sustain a charge, or no, there isn't. And if there is, then the prosecutor makes a decision of whether or not they're actually going to officially bring the charges. And again, my guess is they're going to gather all these things up, and then they're going to hit in a wave or a series of waves. But they have a plan. I know it's slow and I know it's frustrating, but doing it fast for public show is a good way to torpedo your case. So, I know it's not like Law and Order. So just hang on, just wait.
Well, and keep in mind that now there's a third one looming, which is he has been under investigation. His taxes have been under investigation for some time, and there's an indication that they're expecting that to wrap up in the next year or two. It sounds like closer to 2. Now, that's a long time. It's already been like 6 or something like that. But that's how serious it is, and they don't go for 6 years if they don't think they're going to get a lot of their money back. The IRS is one of the few government organizations that makes the government money. They're very proud of that, and they want to keep doing it. So they're gonna they have to think they're onto something if they're still investigating them, and they probably are, from what we've discussed and from what the New York Times has already released. So it looks like so he's going to have that, and his his apparently unlimited supply of money, which is probably far less than he's been claiming it is, but his apparently unlimited supply of money has discouraged people from really taking him head on. He is now losing tremendous money on Trump Tower. He's having a hard time keeping it filled. People are vacating. He is losing licenses to operate his businesses in the city of New York and in other places. He can't keep operating at that kind of loss. He's been bankrupt more than once. So if that keeps happening, he's not going to be, and lawyers don't want to defend him now because he throws his own lawyers under the bus. He doesn't follow their advice, and for the last January 6th issue, nobody wanted to represent him. He had a very hard time finding a legal team. So I think he's going to run out of money. I think he's going to run out of people who want to represent him or be seen anywhere near him, and they're going to see him as sinking, and anyone who's next to him is going to drown with him. So I think he's going to become a pariah soon. Maybe that's wish thinking, but I'm just looking at this, and that's what I'm seeing in the cards. The other thing is that, the taxes. So the taxes is another one that'll probably be a couple of years away. But if he gets hit by more than one of these, I don't think he can defend himself adequately against them simultaneously. Peter Boostin, Peter Booston, I hope that's correct. Merry Christmas from the UK, $5 super chat. Thank you, Peter, so much. We really do appreciate your, especially since this show gets demonetized. Although, I mean, you know, we said Hitler once already on the show. That probably got us demonetized, even if we hadn't. The topic, you know what? We discussed adult topics, and I don't like getting demonetized, but the policy here on this show is we're not gonna use euphemisms, and we're not gonna pull our punches on what we say. This is an adult program, so we get demonetized. About 50% of our shows get demonetized, and that's fine. That's just the way it is. So when people support us, I certainly really appreciate it, and it helps us keep going. So thank you very much for your $5 super chat. We really appreciate it.
One other thing with that too. Well, first off, I want to say to Daryl Frost, will we know if there's one convened? Not usually. Occasionally they mention it, but usually you don't know that there is one, because the whole point is they don't want to let anybody who may be a target of it to know that it exists until they're called to it. So that's a big part of it. Yeah, and that was because Mueller was working. That was a little different though. You know, that when you have a special prosecutor, a lot of this stuff, because it has to do with the way the statute is, and so it has to go to Congress and all that. So, but this will be different. It's rare that we actually know that there is one.
Grand juries, I think, are sometimes public, and it may even be. It's been a while since I've looked into it, but I think Joe's absolutely right. This one, at a minimum, is not going to be.
You may know it exists sometimes, but you'll never know what was said in them. They don't ever release that information. In fact, you can get in trouble for releasing the information from a grand jury, unless there's exceptions, but generally speaking. Now the other one, to your point about Trump's thinking. I was watching, might have been Bo, the Fifth Column, and he pointed out there's a poll that only 24% of Republicans even want Trump to run again. I think they finally, with the exception of that hardcore MAGA, I think they really finally realized that he's a liability to the party at this point. I mean, he probably always was, but he's definitely one now.
I think the RNC does not want him anywhere near. I think they know he's dangerous, and they are politicians first, and that means if he's winning, they'll take him and they'll find a way to deal with it. But if it looks like he's going to start losing, they will bail, and the reason is because they only care about one thing, and that's their own skins. So
we haven't talked about the text messages, did we? Or did we talk about that last week?
We talked about them last week briefly. We can cover them again. I do want to find a rundown from a couple of days ago, so I can go look at that, because I did want to quote one thing. That's 2:42 a.m. in the UK. Wow. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. So yeah, so we had identified the source of one of the text messages, ostensibly. I did want to say one more thing before we go. Yeah. Or before we go on to the text messages, which is so Congress has called a sitting congressman, Scott Perry, and asked him to come. Now, it was a voluntary thing. They did not subpoena him. But that wasn't because they weren't willing to do it. It was because they were extending a courtesy. Since he was a sitting congressman, they gave him the option to come willingly and to have this not be a confrontational thing. He refused, so it looks like he may get a direct subpoena, and at a minimum, he's going to get a contempt of Congress. And now there's a second congressman, I've forgotten who it was, who has also said he will not come before the committee. So you now have two congressmen who are facing contempt of Congress charges in the very Congress they are. This is starting to unravel fast. I mean, that's extraordinary.
And the thing is, for all the criticism that the right wing had for Hillary, when she got called to Congress, she fucking showed up.
That's true. That's really true.
I mean, this is what gets me. I mean, I'm sure there. If we look back far enough, we could probably find I'm talking about post realignment to give that caveat. But since in the post realignment era, I think we'd probably be hard pressed to find Democrats that didn't show up for Congress when called. And even in the past, even like prior to the last 20 years, I mean, look, Oliver North showed up. I mean, he did a lot of bad shit, but he showed up when Congress called him. And where we are now with this idea that, fuck the law. I don't. Yeah, the things don't apply to me.
So we had one of the things so this is, and we've all heard this and we've all said this and we still fall prey to it. It's really quite amazing, and that is we got to come up with some kind of name for this phenomenon. The fact that we forget just how many fucked up things Trump has done from beginning till now. And I had a list in a previous rundown, and unfortunately I haven't been able to find it. I got to keep better. Let's see. I got to keep better rundowns. I don't normally keep the rundown from more than a couple of weeks, but we had gone over because somebody was talking about Russia and what do we know that he did with Russia? Well, we know, for example, that his chief of staff sought to get information on Russia and the WikiLeaks drops so that he could coordinate. We know that he publicly asked Russia to hack the email of his rival. And I know he's going to sit there and say, well, gee, I was just joking. Actually, I don't think he's smart enough to claim he was joking. But, the fact is he was fucking serious. And we know he was serious because he repeated it. And he said, why hasn't anyone released the emails that they hacked? That's a fucking crime to say that, to offer that suggestion. His son met, and a upper-level campaign staffer, I forget who it was, met with Russian agents with the explicit purpose of getting illegal material from them on his political rival, which is a violation of so many fucking laws. I don't even know where to begin. He was he was trying to get the Trump Hotel, lied and said that he had stopped trying to get the Trump Hotel before running. He was still trying to get the Trump Hotel over a year into running, which means that he is now trying to get something that could be seen as a huge political favor from one of our biggest political enemies. Just the amount of fucking things that he has done that would have landed anybody else in jail. So it's a kind of, I'm seeing either House of Cards or this big Jenga tower, and I keep forgetting just how much. And I go over it, and probably those of you listening are like, oh yeah, I remember that. And what he told his attorney, Michael Cohen, to lie about it.
Yeah, suborning perjury. That's a crime also.
Yeah, I mean he's got. There's, and what was it? Donald Trump Jr. said, "Oh, if you're about being able to get information on Hillary. Oh, if it's true, I love it." Yeah, you're getting information on your rival from a hostile government. Holy fuck! And nobody thought this was wrong. So, yeah, I think. I'm really hoping, and I don't know what else is going on. I'm hoping that we are for the first time, we've crossed the threshold into the beginning of the end of Trump. I think there's a possibility that's where we are. That's what it's starting to look like from here.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern anymore isn't so much him personally. It's really what violence and shenanigans his followers are willing to do. When the elections come up and depending on how things go, what they'll be willing to do before, during, and after the elections. That's my concern. Yeah.
All right. Well, so what do you want to talk about next? And let me get. There is one thing, just an interesting tidbit. I figure it's actually worth mentioning. There is another. Now we had a atmospheric river that dumped record water, and we covered this, the flooding in Canada and Washington, Seattle. An unbelievable amount of rain. Well, that river is back, and it's a little south, but it's going to be dumping a huge amount of what looks like to be snow. It's going to be snow in a number of cities in Washington and Oregon, and it looks like Seattle and Portland are now projected to have snow for Christmas. The chances of them actually getting snow on Christmas is about anywhere between 1% and 3%. And they're going to have it, and we'll keep an eye on where this storm goes. Hopefully it's not going to, but it is, if there is a possibility that this could. Now, somebody had said, I should probably find the direct quote before I say this. They were saying that the snow that they're expecting starting tomorrow isn't going to be a huge amount, but they're keeping an eye on it because they said if the snow, there's so much water in this atmospheric river that if it gets to the right place, it could dump enough snow to bury a 2-story house, which, by the way, has happened in Massachusetts. It's rare, but there are blizzards that have done that. So, I mean, we've seen it, but this definitely has the water to do it. But we'll see where it lands. That's not what it's going to do to Seattle, but there will be snow, so we'll keep an eye on that. So, meanwhile, let's see. COVID and Pegasus, I think, are two that are remaining, and I think that just about covers it for today. I don't know what you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I really say about Pegasus is two things. Like, one, it's scary from a perspective of national security, the intelligence agencies, and geopolitics. The average person doesn't really, has much to fear because, again, the actors that are doing these, they're looking for big. They don't care about you and I and our $12 in our bank account. They care about big stuff. But the thing is that they can cause a lot of havoc on a world stage. So that's the big concern there. The other thing too is this idea. I think we talked about this before. How they had claimed that it wouldn't work on U.S. phones. Well, obviously that's been proven to be a lie. And of course it was a lie because there's nothing special about phones. This phone, there's nothing special about it. There's nothing special about the U.S. phone network that would stop hacking. If people, if they know the IP or if they know the MAC address or anything like that, they can get to it.
Joe, there's a 1 in front of it. There's a 1 in front of it. That's what they said. There's a 1 in front of it. You cannot hack it if there's a 1 in front of it. That's what they said.
Which is so good. I think it was, I think Britain's 11 or whatever it is. But it's like, well, every country has a country code. There's nothing magical about ours. It's the trick rubes who don't, because most people don't understand any of this shit. So they can say whatever they want. And most people go, oh, well, they said, and anyone who knows anything about technology is like, excuse me. I think you're full of crap.
What I want to know is, did the U.S. government buy that? Because I think, look, they're allies.
No,
so when they have this software, and we must have said, hey, wait a minute, are you going to use it on American phones? Oh, it doesn't work on American. Your phones are you have the biggest phones, you have the awesomest networks, the biggest. No
one that knows anything. I mean, basically, you might fool people in Congress because, again, half of them are clueless, but probably more than half of them are clueless. But but to anybody who actually matters when it comes to evaluating these things, they know that's bullshit. Yeah. I mean, if I know it and you know it, of course they know. Come on. So it's funny because we always try to make government out to be so incompetent and stupid, but it's really not. And a lot of things that look stupid, either we don't understand them, and so people think it's, or it's on purpose because they're trying to achieve an effect that you and I wouldn't like, but they don't want us to know that that's what they're doing. So, and that's what gets me about guys like DeJoy. I mean, basically, normally when people want to, throw a monkey wrench in the works, they're a little more surreptitious about it. He literally threw monkey wrenches in the works, and he did it out in the open. Oh, which, by the way, that looks like they're finally starting to fill those vacancies on the board. So it looks like getting him out is becoming a more realistic possibility. I doubt it'll be in time to help to save the 2022 election, though, but we'll see.
Well, so before we move on to our last story, I do want to say, so I'm not going to do a deep dive into Pegasus right now. It's just one more. We've got one more thing, and the Israelis keep saying that this can't happen and this isn't happening, and it's clearly happening. But for those of you who are either just hearing about it or just as a quick refresher, we do have a link to our original breaking news when we first learned about Pegasus, and the way we learned about it was a list of 50,000 phone numbers that got released. and it was ostensibly. The source had said it was a list of people who had been hacked by Pegasus. It was just a number, so we didn't even know who they were. We didn't know who they were tied to. And news agencies have been just going down that list and trying to figure out what these numbers are and figure out if, in fact, they've been hacked. Every phone number that they have been able to contact the owner of that, and that owner has given them permission to examine the phone, every single one of them has been hacked. It includes U.S. diplomats, includes French diplomats, German diplomats, members of the UN. It includes members from every major news organization, including Reuters and Associated Press. It includes dissidents. It includes people who were murdered shortly after having their phones hacked. The Israelis are saying, well, no, this can't happen. We ensure that our customers are using this properly. They've given it to Saudi Arabia. I have no idea what legit use the Sauds would have for it, and I don't trust them to use it legitimately. At any rate, it's a long story. It hasn't been covered a lot in the mainstream news, and what happens is every couple of weeks we end up covering it again because they get another big name on this, and this was the who was it? It was the head of a UN investigation. It was the chairman of a committee investigating the Royal House of Saud for war crimes. So this is something that we're going to keep an eye on, and we're going to keep bringing up, and we'll probably have to do its own dedicated show because it's just drips and drabs as it comes out. I do think it's going to become big at some point. So that's what's going on there. Link to the original show that covers what that list was, what Pegasus is, who runs it, who owns it, and who we know has it is down in the description below. So last one, I think, unless there was something else you wanted to hit, the last one is COVID. And I think
I'll have one thing. I will do COVID first. I have one thing that I want to bring up real quick after that, but let's take COVID first.
So for COVID, we'll go reasonably quick. What we know about Omicron, the initial evidence shows that I think in the bronchioles, it grows 70 times faster than Delta, which is astonishing. However, it grows at 1/5 the rate in the lungs, which diseases that do that have a tendency to reproduce quickly and to affect people quickly, but not do as much long-term damage. Your body is able to, like in the lungs, your body is able to catch up to the infection faster because it doesn't reproduce there as quickly, but you can spread it faster. That does appear to be what we're seeing. This is spreading so much faster than Delta right now. It's insane. It's overcome Delta in the U.S. It is now 73% of all infections in the U.S. are believed to be Omicron. Omicron's already overcome in the UK, but it does look like it's less severe. Out of South Africa, they've got a study now. They've now got two studies, that say that people who get it are much less likely to be hospitalized. If they are hospitalized, it's as serious as it would be, but they are 80% less likely to be hospitalized. If they are going to be hospitalized, they're getting hospitalized much faster. They're getting hospitalized at about 40% faster when they get hospitalized. Both of those are huge issues because if the infection rate is 3 times what it was for Delta, which was already significantly higher than the wild type, then this still easily has the possibility to overwhelm our hospital systems, even if it's 80% less of a hospitalization rate because it's still a logarithmic growth. So, not logarithmic, exponential growth. So we'll see. We still have we are looking at a potential catastrophe in as much as the hospital systems once again being overwhelmed. The UK is facing that. We covered last night, and I won't go over right now. We may do a separate show on it if we decide to do it. But there have been every country now that's been hit with it has been considering or engaging in new closures. They've either closed borders, they've closed they've canceled holiday festivities. This includes France, Germany. Belgium has closed its borders. Israel is no longer accepting anybody from or to the United States. So we'll keep an eye on it. But at least it does look like it's less serious to the individuals, maybe far more serious to society. We'll see how it pans out, but it's something we're going to have to watch, and we're going to have to do some specific shows on it at some point in the future. So, Joe, what do you want to say about this? And
first about COVID. I mean, we discussed it a little bit last week, and I guess I forget who it was. Someone said that and I had said, well, there is an evolutionary advantage to not killing your host off, at least not right away. Someone disagreed, but if you think about it, so it's not so much, so I'll amend what I said last week to be a little more clear. There is evolutionary pressure for the host, for the virus to be in a way such that it's very contagious, but the hosts last long enough to spread it, because if they don't live long enough to spread the virus, obviously the virus is going to burn out. So I think that now the downside, Porpoise made the point that the more once so I'm not, I don't know if you remember if you said that the rate of going into the hospital is lower, but if you end up in the hospital, your survival rate's the same as the previous variants. So now and somebody did I was watching, I think of Rebecca Watson, that somebody did the math and said, well, based on the current numbers, and of course it's still early, even though it looks like fewer people end up hospitalized, so that on a, per 1,000 people that get sick, fewer of them are going to get in the hospital. So, so even though the same number of people who get hospitalized would die, fewer of them are going to get to the hospital. However, it's so much more contagious, it spreads so fast that way more people will get it, and hence more people will still die in the aggregate than with the earlier variants. So it's still going to kill more people at a higher overall clip. It may not be percentage-wise higher, but it's just going to, because out of the as a percentage of the population, it'll be much higher.
All right, and then there's three quick things, and one that I can't believe I forgot. We did get a story. It looks like Walter Reed is saying that they believe they have a vaccine that protects people from COVID-19 and every variant, including Omicron. They can't guarantee it's going to protect against future ones, but that it is in fact effective against all the variants. It is a single vaccine. The U.S. Army says they've got it. Walter Reed says that they are going to be doing human trials, they are expected to announce that human trials have shown success against Omicron. I don't know how much credit to give this. I mean, Walter Reed is well respected, so we'll see. But I can't believe I forgot to mention that. The other thing I wanted to mention, two other really quick things on this. First, Titan did drop, and I've got this here, which is it looks like and again, this is still early, so information is changing. But the Toronto's Associate Medical Officer of Health explains that they believe that Omicron may actually not be milder, and they have an explanation as to why there's a difference, and that the early reports of severity are in fact not accurate. But we don't know. That's I haven't heard how or why, but it's worth noting that. Like we're gonna have to do a whole show on it. This is a tremendous amount of data. But to Joe's point, and what he said earlier, because this is worth mentioning, that is the rate of hospitalizations in New York City. That is an exponential growth in the hospitalizations. We actually, I don't know if we dropped it, but from the Broad, they've got a video explaining a number of things and explaining that dip, and we were basically getting ahead of Delta, and we were getting ahead of it because of the number of people who had immunity, either through the vaccinations or through having gotten it, and through basic social distancing. Neither of those appear to have any significant efficacy right now unless you get your booster shot. The quote, fully vaccinated without the booster, and the social distancing is better than nothing, but this appears to have greater range and greater efficacy even with social distancing. So that is New York, the New York hospital system as of right now, and that's staggering.
That's one thing I did see the other day, that there was somebody that actually the first confirmed death in the U.S. was someone who was unvaccinated but previously had one of the earlier strains of COVID. So all those right-wingers were like, well, because in fact, a friend of mine, he's kind of conservative, and he got COVID, so he didn't bother getting the vaccination because he's like, well, I already had COVID. Well, Omicron doesn't care that you had it before, apparently. So the amount of protection you got from being sick previously is apparently minimal compared to actually getting vaccinated. And Well, I got my booster last Thursday. Wow, it's almost been a week. So I didn't. So I had Moderna the first 2 shots. I had Pfizer this time. I had no side effects from any of them. I didn't even feel it. So it just kind of astounds me with everything that's going on. We're actually, if you think about when we were at the worst stage of last year, where everything was totally closed and we're all hiding in our houses, it's way worse now than it was then. And everyone's just wandering around like nothing's going on. Like, if I pretend it's not there, it's not real, right? So it's disappointing. But so anyway, last thing I wanted to talk.
Well, Peter said something in live chat. I want to quickly address that. So, first of all, I think there's estimates now that say it's actually going to get worse, and it's going to get worse than it's ever been. Omicron is looking like it has the potential to be worse than we've ever seen. So, we'll see. But there is one thing, because Peter Boostons had said, surely it seems less potent because so many have been jabbed. That is an interesting observation too, which is it does appear as if you do have it is able to evade the immune response. It does appear as if people who've had previous vaccinations might still end up getting less sick in general, so they're just as likely to get it. Or there's, I think, about a 30%. Vaccine efficacy has an estimated 30% against Omicron if you don't have a booster, 70% if you do. But in all cases, if you get it right now, there's evidence to suggest that just like with Delta breakthroughs, if you get it, you do have an increased chance of survival. So one interesting thing is, okay, is that why the numbers look better than they actually are, is because so many of these are breakthrough infections. But if you don't have the vaccine, you're looking at the same mortality rate, or maybe even worse for Delta.
I saw something. There's one of the hospital systems in Pennsylvania has been posting statistics on a daily basis, and I see people keep taking screenshots and posting it. And like 80 to 85% of the people who are hospitalized are unvaccinated. And now a few days ago, the percentage of people who were either in the ICU or on vents were about 80%. Were unvaccinated. But now, I guess, it's down. It was from yesterday. They had 0 in the ICU that were unvaccinated, that were vaccinated, and they had 0 on vents that were vaccinated. So the vaccines, and I guess because of boosters, now people are taking the boosters as well. So it is making a difference. And I'll tell you what, if there's some other booster that comes out, I'm going to take that too.
Oh, and they're already saying
I'll take a booster every week if I have to. I don't give a shit.
Well, we may. Well, first of all, I don't know. We already accept so many yearly. I mean, how many or not yearly, but it's tetanus.
Flu is yearly.
Flu is yearly. We already accept so many vaccines that we do have to get that are just part of a regimen of growing up. And as a kid, you got your MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, all this other shit. It's like we've had vaccines around. This may become a part of life, just like all the other vaccines that are already there, and we just don't even think about it or complain about it because we're just so used to them already. But fighting that and saying that there's an alternative is really being very counterproductive at this point.
Part of the problem is that and again, it's mostly people in the right wing. I saw this thing that said 40% of Republicans are unvaccinated, 7% of Democrats are unvaccinated. So there's definitely a political divide, and there seems to be, and you can hear it in the rhetoric, there's something in that conservative mind that somehow seems to think that it's a sign of weakness to get the vaccine, and you're showing how tough you are. The virus doesn't care. It's not a thinking agent. It doesn't care how brave or weak you think you are. It's going to survive, and it's going to, if it can get in, it's going to propagate, and if it can get into your body and make you, because that's how viruses work. Viruses basically insert RNA sequences into when you're replicating, and basically trick you into basically splicing into their DNA and reproducing copies of themselves. So you become an engine that produces the virus. That's how they work. they don't care. There's no, and this idea that there's some, that there's some bravery in being foolish. It's kind of like, I saw actually a great comparison. It's like, well, because you have to think about, because they'll point that breakthroughs happen, and somebody said, well, yeah, I'm not going to wear the bulletproof vest because sometimes people get shot in the face. Like, okay, it doesn't make you brave running out there. I mean, people in the military, they're very. I would take it that most of them are fairly brave. They're wearing their flak jackets. They're wearing their ballistic helmets. They drive around tanks that have lots of armor. I don't think it's a matter of a lack of bravery to take precautions. So totally different things. The thing I wanted to get at, I saw a video from Robert Reich earlier, and I was thinking this anyway. I wanted to say this anyway, but this kind of reinforced it. And it basically said that, like, the biggest enemy we have is cynicism, because on the left, I know, I'm sure, like, at least many people in the audience probably more liberal or more progressive than I am, and then certainly in the Saturday stream I'm in, everybody is. Well, most people are, not everybody, but the thing is that but a lot of times what happens, people in the progressive side of the fence get cynical, and they're basically like, oh well, the Democrats they're not going to do it, blah blah blah, and they give up, and voting doesn't matter. But people with lots of money spend lots of that money to try to prevent you from voting. They try to convince you it doesn't matter. They try to pass law and succeed in passing laws to make it harder to vote. They do things. They spend a lot of money with manipulating the media to make you unhappy, to make you feel like it's hopeless. They wouldn't spend that. Think about it. They don't pay their employees shit because they can get away with not doing it. If they could get away with not gerrymandering the laws and making it so that you get cynical or making it harder for you to vote, they wouldn't spend that money because they don't like to spend money on anything but themselves. They're doing this because there's a payoff. They spend billions because the payoff is even more billions. And usually they're looking for a rate, normally when someone invests, they're looking for a rate of return, 10, 20, 30, 40%. So every time you see them spend $1 to try to get you to not vote or to make it so you can't vote, they're getting a payback somewhere. So don't let cynicism sink in. I know it's hard because there's a lot of bad stuff that's been going on, will continue to go on, but don't give up, because that's when we lose.
Yeah, I could certainly use hearing that message myself more often, so thank you. Thank you for that, Joe. I appreciate that. I think you're absolutely right. All right, so with that, I think we've just about covered everything. Now, so we are going to be moving After Dark from Fridays to Thursdays for a number of reasons. I think Fridays, there's just a lot of shows on Fridays, and Thursdays may not be quite as easy for people to come to. I'm aware of that, but on the flip side, also a lot of our audience, I know the shows that we're I was like, I don't want to compete with some of these shows because I like the shows too. So they're usually guests that we've had on. So I think Thursdays will work well for us. So we'll be trying After Dark out on Thursdays. We're going to move it to Thursdays. However, we will not be doing it tomorrow. I think we're going to let everyone take a break for the holidays. If there is serious breaking news, we're going to come on, and we'll come on Christmas or Christmas Eve or whenever. But short of that, and by the way, that'll be Joe. So I'm just going to hand Joe the license keys for VMix and be like, I got a family. We're opening a present. You go do the breaking news. It'll be a great show, man. So we'll be and we haven't had anything serious in a while, knock on wood. So we should be good. I'm
always serious.
It's in your name, actually. I was thinking too. I didn't. But the placards actually for the names are actually very hard to make. They're really, because you can't just use a regular font. But it's like I gotta make you yours because it looks nice and would look good. So we're gonna make you your placard, for fuck's sake. Jesus, you think I'd get around to it? But at any rate, I will say, if Trump is indicted, I love my kids. I do. But if we're in the middle of Christmas opening presents and I get a thing that Trump has been indicted, kids, I'm sorry, but that's what I'm doing live. ASAP, I will be.
Yeah. There'll be another Christmas. I mean,
yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Joe, thank you so much as always, and we'll have yourself a marvelous holiday.
bye.
Welcome to In Time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. We read all of your comments, and if you like this video, please don't forget to share.